I have just a quick background, been involved with environmental finance and development, both on the debt side and equity side for some time, initially with the World Bank Group and Global Environment Facility, and more recently over the last, I guess now already 10 years, focusing on U.S.-based ventures through BGV Investment Partners as well as investment funds. Most recently, and what I've been asked to present briefly here today, I've been working with a DC-based developer on an investment fund concept that would include the opportunity to avail of so-called opportunity zone programs or legislation which came out of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and so I'll kind of focus on that, and then we can get into some ideas around what we're seeing in the market on that, how things are being structured, and how that overlaps potentially with the green tech, clean tech space. And Mark here, I know, is also working on some opportunity zone funds. So when we get to the panel, I think if I may take the liberty to address any, invite Mark to address any particular legal questions, this might be a good opportunity to do that. So in general, and some of my slides will be up on the website afterwards as well. So in general, it's important to understand that the opportunity zone program, and I'm just using that word, it's not really what it is, but it's just for descriptive purposes. It's really a tax benefit, tax incentive structure. It's not a financing program, and that's very important to understand because there are other programs out there like PACE, like low-income affordable housing, LIHTC as it's called, and others that help developers find and build, get into the green building space or get into the affordable housing space or operate in areas where under the so-called new markets tax credit program, low-income underserved markets through a program and a financing structure. This is a little bit different in the sense that it's basically just a capital gain tax incentive program. And so, in general terms, very simply, there are kind of two parallel tracks as to how that's applied. Number one is there is a tax deferral. And so if you have, let's say you have a capital gains tax of $100 today, and you allocate that to what is referred to as an opportunity zone fund or project, and that again gets into some detailed legal definition of what that means. If you do that today through the end of 2019, you will be able to defer that the tax that you would have paid on that initial $100 capital gains tax, defer it up until the year 2026 or until there's an exit from that investment. So that's sort of track one, is the deferral track. The second is an opportunity to essentially waive the tax on appreciation of your investment. And there are a couple of different steps along the way over the course of 10 years. And again, it's a little bit complicated, so I'll basically just sum it up as if you hold for up to 10 years, you can essentially waive all of the appreciation and not pay capital gains tax on the appreciation of that original investment. I'll leave the general overview as that for now. It's, again, a little bit complicated, and if we get into some questions later, I can address some of those, and I think Mark can address some as well. The other aspect that I want to focus on is how does it connect with the sort of clean tech, clean energy space. And it's important to understand that this is a place-based incentive. It's geographically oriented, so that there are all of the, as of last year, I think it was mid-2018, all the 50 states finally had their approved jurisdictions, tracks as they're called under the program, for what will be eligible as an opportunity zone all across the country, now thousands all over the country. And so what that means is you actually have to have a project or a qualified opportunity fund project entity structure in a very specific location. And we've seen in the, a lot, because of that, we've seen a lot of activity in the real estate development space in particular, much less so in the clean energy space, although I am aware of at least one renewable energy type fund which is trying to get off the ground called Obsidian, but there's not a whole lot. A lot of the attention has been in the real estate development space precisely because it's so place-based oriented. So much so that you'll see up here, for example, I have this Benny project through Neighborhood Development Company, a group I'm helping put together investment fund structure for that. They're in Northeast DC on 3443 is the address. If you're on the other side of the street, an even numbered address, you're not in you're in an opportunity zone. If you're on 3443, you're not in an opportunity zone, so it's not eligible. Or at least right now, because the regulatory framework is entirely defined, you don't know. But for now, so these are sort of the complexities that you're dealing with when you have a place-based kind of incentive structure like the Opportunity Zone program. So we're seeing most of the activity in the real estate development space as a result of that, because buildings go in very specific locations. And so how does that overlap with the clean energy space? I've identified some examples up here, and we've heard earlier about the PACE program. So I think that's probably the most obvious near-term way to kind of connect it. And there is no prohibition about linking up the tax program to the Opportunity Zone legislation with existing finance programs, whether it be PACE, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be Energy Star and LEED-related kinds of programs. So I think the green building space is probably broadly defined, is probably where you're going to see the most kind of overlap with clean energy and the Opportunity Zone program. There may be some, there is an opportunity for some funds to get underway. We just haven't seen a lot of activity yet. And then I think, ventures such as some that I've listed up here, you can find them on my website as well. There's a Brightfield Transportation Solutions, electrical vehicles, solar power charging station system. If that's, the specific projects are in the right geographical locations per the jurisdictions under the Opportunity Zone program, that could be take advantage of the investment, the tax incentive program. Some of the others there's a KW River hydroelectric that Peter knows. If you had an infrastructure project in the right jurisdiction, that could take advantage of the tax incentive that's available, and so forth. So I'll leave it with that for some general overview comments. Again, it's a fairly complex structure, and I think it's important to get in touch directly with an advisor, a legal advisor, investment fund advisor, accountant, etc., if you really want to understand the program.